All right. Okay. So here we go, dude. So this is weird for me. And we just like I said, this is gonna be a weird conversation, or it could be weird. I hope it gets weird. Um,
Right.
but I'm thankful that you jumped on. I've got one of my very good friends, Bryan Simpson. If you didn't know you're one of my very good friends, I'm telling you now. And so thankful
I'm
that
like you're giving me my flowers in your introduction. I love it.
yeah, man. Well, this is actually so Bryan Simpson. Brian's he is a man of many gifts and abilities, and he's a musician. He's a man about town there in Nashville, Tennessee, and one of my very good friends. And so, Bryan, we're gonna get into some real meat, I hope, today. So, like, basically, man, I wanted to start with this. So, like the other night, Rebecca and I were watching a movie. I'm a John Cusack guy. I don't know if you knew that. I'm a John Cusack guy. I
Mhm.
like that. I like that he's just mopey. Or I used to like that about him. He's mopey, and so we were watching Serendipity, which is really not a good movie now that I think about it. Um, but so we're watching it, and one of the guys in the movie is John Corbett, and
Okay.
it actually made me think of you because I was like, why am I connecting the dots there between John Corbett and Bryan Simpson? And so you actually had a song on the 2006 self-titled record, John Corbett, right? Like, and so when an actor says, "I'm going to cross over, man, I'm going to do this music thing," like
Right.
and you figure out like, "Oh man, this actor is going to do," he was on Northern Exposure, and he's going to, he wants to cut my song. But let me real quick, I wanted to just, if I may, I was going to tell you.
Please.
So the songwriters on this record, looking back on it in retrospect, almost 20 years later, got some heavy hitters, man. Okay.
Right.
So Rodney
Yes, sir.
Clawson, Tim
Who?
Nichols, Rodney Clawson,
I've heard of him.
Tim Nichols,
Yeah.
Ashley Gorley,
Hmm.
Rivers Rutherford,
Wow.
Jesse Alexander, Hal Ketchum, Daryl Scott, and Bernie Taupin.
Wow. That is some
That
prize company to be in.
that is some rarefied air, man.
Dude, John, I gotta listen to that song. I don't rate. What's the song called?
I'd have to look.
I don't get so many cuts that I can't remember, but I can't remember because it's
So
been.
yeah, the song was Revival.
Mm.
And so yeah, so and here's what reminded me, man, just thinking about that as we have this conversation. Um, is that something I didn't know until 2001.
Hmm.
Your brother actually told me because we were living in Texas. Your brother actually said, "Hey man, you need to go to Nashville. You need to go to the Bluebird Cafe. Check it out." And back then we had the Nelson, not like Ricky Nelson's but like the Nelson brothers that had written like 18 Wheels and a Dozen Roses, right?
Okay.
So the great Kathy Mattea. But
Mhm.
but they were kind of giving us the story behind the song. Um, and man, something clicked in me where I was like, man, this is like there was a medium that I never understood, which was songwriting, that I've now found 20 years later is the lifeblood, certainly of the country music industry. Would you agree with that, or would you not agree with that?
I would agree with that.
Yeah. So
You know what's interesting about the song Revival? It sparks a memory in my. The main memory it sparks in mine is I don't remember exactly how the great John Corbett's what his cut sounded like, but I did get to hear that song was actually recorded on Gretchen Wilson's original record, which had her big song on it, the what's that, Redneck
that
Woman,
woman, yeah,
which I think it sold like 4 to 5 million copies or
it
whatever,
was a huge
huge
record.
record. And when Redneck Woman took off, they had 11 songs in that record, and Revival was the 11th song. And so to just kind of square things up, like publishers and record labels will do and stuff, they just cut off one song to make it a perfect 10 so they could keep all the splits as they wanted to have them. And Revival fell to the cutting room floor. And I remember being so disappointed, thinking it was going to be literally it happened at the last second right before it's going to shrink wrap. So, and then, but as one door closes, as they say, another one opens.
Yeah,
And who knew that John Corbett would sell 1,200 at fan club meetings or whatever a year or whatever. And
yeah.
no, that's cool. John Corbett. I used to love that show, Northern Exposure. What was it about? Was it a guy that moved, like a psychiatrist that moved to the north? Is that what happened?
I think he was a doctor.
Oh, a
Um,
doctor. Oh, and he
yeah.
had worked on, and he'd have to work on like mooses. Is it moose?
Meese, me, yeah. I mean, he would work on the moose population. And then there was the one girl that was in it. She was in a cliffhanger with Stallone. she's not the girl that got dropped to her death, but she was the girl that actually lived to tell about it. And I
Is
forget
she
her.
Delaney something? Delaney something?
No,
Is she on China Beach?
I think I think no, she wasn't. I think you're thinking Dana Delaney.
Dana
She,
Delaney, who's on Tulsa King
y-
now.
okay, but no, she was not on China Beach. Well, no, Dana Delaney was on China Beach, but the lady that was in Northern Exposure was not in China Beach. But I got to figure out who that is now because she was.
Northern Exposure is also serves as a correct me if I'm wrong, a documentary for Noah Kahan as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Yeah.
I think he was born on the set of Northern Exposure.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't know this, but former power forward Carlos Boozer, also born right down the street.
Wow,
In
that is
yeah,
people do not know that.
in
Talk
Juneau,
about the
Alaska. Yeah.
strange concentric circle of the universe, really sort of cosmically saying,
Mhm.
"Hey, we can do a lot of things here."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like God shows off, like here's a basketball player that can really jump, and here's a singer who can really sing, and then here's a doctor that can move to the north and work on geese.
And it's just gumbo. It's just this line. Yeah,
It's
just this
really
yeah, man. But well, so okay, so in case people don't know your body of work, and we're gonna get into this a little bit, right? So in case people don't know your body of work, man, you have got cuts. Correct me if I'm wrong. With Blake Shelton, Billy Currington, George Strait, Jason Aldean, Joan Nichols. You've got two number ones to your to your credit. You've got a number five that I know of to your credit. You've got top 40 cuts. I mean, you're the founding or one of the founding members of the bluegrass supergroup now defunct Cadillac Sky. You guys just couldn't make it work. Just it's just like Liz Taylor and all her husbands. But you guys just couldn't make it happen. But all that to say, but man, so you're a man about town. So I talk about like the 2006 record with John Corbin. Before then, though, like I mean, you were. Let me ask you this because you started out. When did you know at what point that like, hey man, I songwriting's a thing. I think that I can make money at it. Um, I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try my hand at making money and making a career out of it. Like, how old were you? Where were you? Like all that stuff.
I moved to when I came to town, I was I got a gig playing sort of fiddle and mandolin guitar for a couple artists in town. I never really came to town. Actually, town came to me, and I was like working at Six Flags Over Texas in an amusement park, and I was kind of like the leader of the band, doing this like kind of sort of like pyrotechnics with my fiddle and stuff like that. And then a guy that was actually played drums for a guy that was on a label in Nashville said, "Hey man, why about you? You should come audition for our band and be in our band." And I was like, "Oh, okay, great." And I was like, so I came to town, I got that gig. And so I started traveling in and out of town. And I was already writing songs, but I never thought at that point, like writing songs was something I could make a career of. I don't think I ever thought of myself as a songwriter for a little while. I thought of myself as a player, a musician, and thought I wrote songs as well. It was like a secondary part of the experience or whatever. And then I remember like through that I met a couple of guys that kind of like a guy named Ashley Gorley who we started writing in the tape room over at a publishing house, and somebody, a friend, set us up and said we would work together well, even though she thought we'd write together well, even though she'd never even heard his songs at all. I think she just thought our personalities would mix well or whatever, and she was correct. And so we started writing songs, and then one of the songs that we wrote were like 5 or 10 songs over like a 6 month period of time or whatever. And that in coming in and out of Nashville, I was still living in Texas. And in that time period, like it was like we got one of them cut on this girl named Joanna Janae, a song called Since I've Seen You Last. And a publishing company called me. I was in Texas, called me and offered me a publishing deal. And I remember the deal was like $6,000 for a year. And I
Wow.
was like, yeah, I wanted to push everything into all chips in on that for sure. I was like, this is amazing. But obviously it wasn't enough to make a living. But I remember at that time, that was probably the first time when I was like, oh, maybe I can do this.
Mm.
Um, and maybe I can start to make a living as a songwriter. It probably wasn't though until someone actually said, "I'll give you money to do it."
Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't very much money either.
No, and that's always a carrot that tends to dangle that makes us think about whether or not we want to push forward with something. But you mentioned that like you were you were on tour with some people that I mean, I think that you kind of glazed over that, but I mean, you were touring with like some heavy hitters, right? I mean, you were touring with like
Yeah.
Sarah Evans and I
My
mean,
first gig was with a guy named Jeff Wood. He gave me the first time to come to town, and then I met a guy named Mark Nesler. I remember being with Mark. He's written a bunch of, probably 20 number one songs. He wrote "Since the Seen You Last" for Tim McGraw and like a bunch of other huge songs or whatever. And I remember when I was hanging out on the bus with him, I recognized something in him that I saw in myself. That when he was writing songs, he would kind of drift off into another world, and you could talk to him, and he'd just be a blank. He was just in another place. And I remember thinking, right, songs kind of takes me to that place. But I also knew he sort of could enter into another level, another domain when he wrote songs. And at that point, he was writing songs by himself as well or whatever. And so I remember thinking there's something about that that's fascinating to me or whatever that was interesting. And so that anyway, he was too much of a songwriter to ever be a big singer, I guess, or whatever. But then I got a gig with Sarah Evans, and she was probably the biggest artist I played with. But I really didn't like. I immediately didn't like the crowd. The appeal of seeing a crowd cheer for you and all that stuff went away in no time at all. And I was just like, I'm just playing other people's, because these songs that we were playing we're just playing the record. So, and Sarah and a lot of other artists like David Ball, they were all very interested in, to some degree, playing mainly what the record already had on it. So I didn't really even have any say in what I was playing. I was just copying, and I've never been. First of all, I'm not very good at copying what other people do. I don't think I have a skill set that makes me good at copying what other people do, and I'm not as proficient on my instruments to do that. But what I do like to do is do things that like only I can do. Like I like to be creative and original to a fault, I guess, to some degree, as much as you can be. But so I didn't really like that. So I got out of that as soon as I could. And for 10 years went back to basically writing songs. For about I'd come to Nashville, I'd write for a week and a half, and I'd come home for like 3.5 weeks or whatever and work a regular job.
yeah.
And then it was about 30 years old. I was about 30 something years old when I started. When a buddy of mine's like, a guy named Wade Kirby, who's his ancient spirit. He's like, why don't you sing your own songs? Because I was starting to see it doesn't take very long after you get a publishing deal. You realize like, hey, I'm writing a lot of songs, and most of them are never getting heard, other than by my mom and my wife.
Mhm.
You know what I mean, or maybe my brother or whatever, some of my friends. Because so I was like, this is painful. It's a really painful process, full of just literally like 99% is rejection. It's funny because in high school I avoided rejection. I always hated rejection, so I didn't even ask girls to the dances or nothing because I was so scared of rejection that I spent my whole life basically like sending songs out into the world, and then people just like sending little doves out and just having them shoot them down bloody to the ground or whatever. So it's been that whole way my whole life. And but I didn't really like that in my buddy's way. He's like, hey man, I like the way you deliver songs, so you should just start your own band. And I just never thought of myself as a singer. I thought of myself as a songwriter and a player, and I sang, but I didn't think of myself as a singer. And I do think, but I was like, okay, well, I guess so. You know what I mean? I was naive and I was like, maybe I can make this work somehow. Maybe on the strength of the songs or strength of the playing. And then, so when I went back to Texas, I started trying to start a band, and wasn't until I tried in vain for probably 6 months. And then I got him. Matt Menifee came into my life, and we started the band, and that kind of shifted gears in that respect. I do wish, it's funny to think about, like I wish I had ever thought. It wasn't until even last little while where I started thinking myself as a singer, and it's hard. I think it's hard to be something that you don't actually believe that you are, and it's really you can't. I don't think you can be really. You can ever equal your sort of you can't ever match your gift if you don't believe in it. Um, Funny enough, I watched last night. You ever watch any cult shows?
Um, I mean, I used to watch Punky Brewster, which was kind of a
Okay, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Which is a strange show. You think about that. Her mom drops her off at the grocery store, if I remember the plot correctly, or she leaves her in a grocery store, and then this old man takes her home and lets her live with him.
Hmm. Yeah,
Isn't
that's
that the thesis of the show?
yeah, but you know what's even crazier is that like whoever it is, like the social worker or whatever it is, like that they would let Punky stay with a guy who was 97 years old. Like I mean,
Yeah.
at any moment he's going to cash in. But
Well, and
yeah,
also, don't you think the neighbors were like, why does he all of a sudden have a little girl?
no, yeah, I mean, I think for the '80s, they probably thought it was.
Teenage Bride, maybe? Russian? Soul Moon Fry?
Um, I don't, I don't know that they would have thought that, but
Is Soul
I,
Moon Fry Asian, by the way?
what's that?
Is that's her name, right? Soul Moon
I,
Fry.
uh,
She doesn't really look
Soleil,
like she's
Soleil.
Asian, but is she?
I don't think she's Asian. I think she has freckles, but I don't think she's Asian.
Just hippie? Her mom was just a hippie, maybe?
Maybe so. The only episode I really remember is like her friend across or the way or whatever. I forget her name, but she got stuck in a fridge and
Yeah,
and like
yeah.
almost died for lack of oxygen. But outside of that, I mean, yeah. So anyway, yeah, Punky Brewster. Sorry, you were talking about cult shows. Yeah.
Well, you know what? Oh, I was saying the cult is. Last night somebody said we should watch this show called The Vow, which is on Max.
Okay.
It's about something called ESP. It's about executive something practices. I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's about this cult that operated and and it was crazy. Like part of their practices early on, um, yeah, part of the thing that kind of gets you, they go through a 5 day initiation process, and it's just like kind of seems like it's like practices on how to become a better executive or better at business or at life in general or whatever. And it's funny because me and my wife were watching it, and within the first 45 minutes of the show, we're like, we would probably sign up for this. It sounds pretty good, you know. But one of the things they were talking about is they said that we all operate with limiting beliefs. There's patterns in our thought processes that we have limiting beliefs, that we think something about ourselves that isn't necessarily true, that someone either put upon us or we decided about ourselves. And that limiting belief is not allowing us to reach our ceiling. So it was funny when I said that a while ago. I thought about I'm already being hypnotized by the cult that I was exposed to last night. But normally I don't like cult shows. Just if you're asking, I don't really like cult shows.
Well, no, I mean, I think you're right. We do, all of us probably operate in limiting beliefs, but I think I told you this a handful of months ago. I really do believe that you would have made a great cult leader, and I mean
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. No,
I mean, you've got all the abilities, I think, to be one of the greats. Um,
thank you, thank you, thank you.
I think you point in a
I cut
direction.
my hair. So, one thing I don't want to interrupt you, but like I did cut my hair recently and I'm still getting used to it being shorter because I think one thing that was leading you toward that thought process was the fact that I was like, my hair was reaching my shoulders. And cult leaders, in order to be what they're in full bloom, they must kiss everybody on the lips when they meet them, and they must have hair that's at least shoulder length.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. No, totally. Well, because it's funny. I started seeing this, and we're getting way off the beaten path, man. But beaten path, beaten path,
it'd be cool if there was a beaded path.
or like like a beaded path, like little beads of water.
Yeah, that'd be cute, like a little beaded
Um,
path that you let
yeah,
outside your door.
yeah. But no, like so, I started seeing this functional medicine guy,
Yeah,
and so it was funny, man, because one of the things that he's done in just a short amount of time has helped me to debunk some of the thoughts that the thought processes that I have that are really illogical,
yeah,
like
right.
things that I've thought about my health that are just untrue. And
Yeah.
so whether again, whether whatever it is, I think that we all have these things that we're just like, hey, that's a mountain, it's just too high to climb.
Yes. Yes. I
So
literally was facing this thing because I was thinking about like this year, that we just were, I don't know if this is time stamped or whatever, but you can cut this out. Your producer can cut this out if need be. Yeah, but this being the second day of the new year or whatever, like, I was thinking about the fact that what are some little things that I can kind of incrementally add to my life? Not necessarily. I think this year's been a good year of change or whatever this last year, but this new year, I was thinking like, I was sitting there as I was about to walk to the back room to start this podcast, and there was a coat that I grabbed last night, and it's sitting wrapped around like it's warming the chair at the dinner table. And the truth is, it will probably sit there for 3 days. It would have normally sat there for 3 days because for some reason I'll get that later. That looks like a lot of work to me. When I don't have a 30,000 square foot house. You know what I mean? It won't cost me more than, so I literally looked at it and said, that's going to cost me I'm actually going to the room that it will be in. So I'm looking at about 25 seconds of work to walk this thing back there. Maybe I could pick it up and then my wife won't have to look at it for 3 days. And And I feel like I know it sounds crazy. They say some for some people to get from home get from first base to home plate is not as far as it is from one person to get from home plate to first base. That was what it for me is. I felt like I had climbed the Sierra Nevadas by just picking up that coat and taking it back here. So now I'm trying this new thing where I'm trying to put like that's not gonna because the things that saw me, I can do big things. It's the small things that kind of like, oh, that would why do I don't want to do that? And it's like such a short period of time that it could be solved in.
Right. Well, and because that is ridiculous. Like what you just told me is a ridiculous thought. But let me tell you, I'll tell you one of mine, and it just doesn't make sense. Um, so you know how sometimes people, you'll drive whatever, Franklin, wherever, people have
Yeah,
lights strung up on their house, not like
yeah,
Christmas lights, just like, maybe on their back patio,
I like that.
yeah, to cozy it up. I've convinced myself over the years that I don't have the know-how to string
Yeah,
lights
yeah,
up and to enjoy that benefit of coziness and
right.
comfort on my back porch.
Well,
So
you can get firemen to do it, I think. You can have fire
I didn't know
if you
that.
can't cross over this sort of mental crucible, you can just hire firemen to
Yeah.
come to your house. And your wife would be a nice treat for her to see some. I always think firemen when they're working are be shirtless. I don't know why, but
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, it's a very real thing. And I don't know if you actually saw like Nate Bargatze just had a new special that he's on, it's on Netflix or whatever.
yeah.
One thing that I love about him, man, is he's very vulnerable, but like, hey, my wife does basically all the heavy lifting in my
Yeah.
house, and I'm very useless. And I would say that's true somewhat of you. And I'll only put you out. I only say that because I'm very similar. It's just like if you were to say, "Hey, who pays this bill?" I'd be like, how do your lights stay on?
Yeah, yeah.
It's just like I think my wife knows a guy that kind of turned like she talks to him sometimes and she like pays the bill.
Oh,
But yeah, and there are some things that I'm just like, oh, I can tell you with pinpoint accuracy, but it's typically things that I care about.
yeah, yeah.
But she really is running things and
Oh,
but
yeah, yeah. Christy is definitely running things. Like I say all the time, like I grew up and I try to figure out where I got to this place where I'm writing songs and all this music stuff or whatever. But like my dad actually, he wasn't he wasn't ever able to go into it professionally as he had two growing boys who were eating him out of house and home. So he had to have a regular job, a full-time job, all the time job or whatever. But my dad did poetry. He wrote poems. He wrote long form poems. He wrote cowboy poems, all this stuff, books of it and stuff. He'd always write them. And but he also so he was that, but he also was an electrician. He was an engineer. He was a mechanic. He could fix anything. He was a plumber. All these things, and like he could, literally all this kind of stuff. He built a deck on the back of our house. He built a carport. He would redo our cabinets, everything. So he had all these things on here. And then there's one scraggler on the end of him being a poet. And that's the one that, to my wife's growing sadness inside, that's the one limb of the tree that I grabbed hold of and said, I want to do something like that. And the rest, it's always funny. I tell people at the end of when I do shows, they're like, oh man, it's so cool, so awesome, or whatever. I'm like, yeah, but sadly, this you have just seen everything I know how to do, basically. That was it.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
it lasted for maybe what, an hour and a half, and I'm done. Now I'm like, now I should just be shoved in a hole somewhere
Yeah.
and like
I'm useless to you. Yeah.
yeah, useless. Yeah.
Like if you walked out and somebody that came to your show was like, they're tired, blown out, you'd have been like, man, you should call somebody.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like,
Definitely.
yeah,
Well,
like you,
I remember I was trying to do stuff and not to this is a bluegrass name drop, but Bryan Sutton, the famed guitarist or whatever, he leaned up. I was telling someone about it that I'd try to all afternoon. I'd try to fix something. I don't remember what it was. It was quite a few years ago, but I was at a show and he leaned forward and grabbed my shoulder and he said, "Hey, Bryan, have you ever read The Millionaire Next Door?" And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "The Millionaire Next Door suggests that a man should do what he's good at and let other people do what they're good at. And that will be something that benefits him financially, ultimately, more than if he tries to do a little bit of everything and it sort of robs him of the time he could spend doing the thing he's good at." And I remember feeling like I had just heard a prophet's words. Like I was like, this, because it just gave me an excuse to not have to do anything else. And I've quoted that passage to my wife like it's scripture. And so she's learned how to do, to her benefit. She knows how to do so much. She can fix she fixed a computer the other day. She can fix a bird feeder. She can just so many different. There's just a swath of things that she would never have learned how to do had she not had the benefit of having a useless husband.
Yeah. Man, it's funny that because like I was there's a podcast called Diary of a CEO with Stephen Bartlett. I don't know if you've actually heard that, but he had a
No,
guest on.
cut that. We don't want anybody competing with yours.
Yeah, yeah, we'll keep the competition at bay if I can. But no, but all that to say, like he had a financial guru on, and his name was Raoul Pal, and it kind of rhymes, but Raoul
Mm.
Pal. But anyway, but basically Raoul was saying, be good at one thing, like be an
Yeah.
expert in one thing, and then be a novice at everything else as best you can. And I would say you probably nail that. I mean, I think
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the truth, and I think even to even take that even yes and even further is that what is actually happening, I feel like that makes me enjoy the things I actually am good at and has really like helped me sort of get over just kind of hopefully getting a little further over myself and which has helped me get over nerves and all kinds of things and worry and all this kind of pretension that I can set in or whatever pretense that can set into my life or whatever is actually I'm trying to be a novice at the thing that I actually do that I actually have spent the most time doing, which is the most difficult thing to do because I'm like trying to untether from the past experiences that I've had with music and writing songs and singing and performing and all these things, and try to treat each moment, each situation as I am a novice, so that I can have that sort of wonder that really kind of like ignited me initially. I can remember there are very few moments that I can like pinpoint, like I can know, oh, something lit in me right there, that I go, that changed my entire life. And I remember literally writing the first song I ever wrote when I was probably around 14 years old or whatever. And it was called Where the Bluebonnets Grow, which my mother still thinks is probably the best song I've ever written, that I peaked early. But I remember feeling something ignite in me as I was working on it. And my dad, actually, the poet, helped me finish that song. That's the only song we've ever written together. And maybe that's why my mom likes it best. And maybe it is really great. I don't know. I need to listen again. But I remember thinking like, but I remember something igniting in me. It's because I didn't know what was happening. And I love those moments. That's why people I think love falling in love, is because they don't know exactly what's happening with this other thing that they're doing. And when we seek it out, and it's actually the moment we start falling out of love with things is the moment we sort of decide what something is. So I'm trying to keep that sort of novice mindset. I'm trying to push it into, it's really more difficult to do than I imagine, to not go, well, I know how this comes. I know what turns out here, because I never wanted music or performing or singing, writing, or any of that stuff to be, I really don't want it to be a performance. I said performance just now, but I don't really want it to be a performance. It sounds like I'm sort of like doing something that's been done. I'm doing it again to me. It's like, I want it to be an experience. And the only way for that to be the case is I feel like for me to be experiencing it at the same time as whoever I'm doing it in front of. And that's made it a lot more lately. I'm enjoying what I do for a living a lot more.
No, man, and I love that because it's like, one thing, for instance, like you talk about, the emotion, people fall in love. We love the way that whole thing kind of. So it's like,
Yeah.
the moment that you met your wife for the very first time, the feeling that you felt the very first time you talked to her on the phone, you held her, you got the courage to hold her hand, the time you got the courage to kind of give her a kiss, or like all these kind of monumental moments that you can't recreate. You can't recreate that emotion,
No,
you
no.
know.
Just all you can do is like, I think you just kind of like reset your mind. The Bible says renew your mind daily or whatever. Paul says that. It's like kind of, if you can, like shake up the Etch a Sketch screen and take a look at things. And every once in a while it happens. With something will happen in your life. One thing that seems to, a couple things that seem to shake up the Etch a Sketch for me are like somebody new being born, or somebody passing away, or some cataclysmic event, which none of us, for the most part, I kind of want the comfort food of things kind of being the same. But like every once in a while we have a event that happens where it kind of makes us all look at things differently and maybe anew for the first time in a long time. And it seems to really help. And I can remember a few moments like that where those things happen. And that's why uh, I like doing, so, like I try to put new things in my life where I don't know exactly how they're going to go. And it seems to help me sort of feel that thing I haven't felt in a while.
Yeah, no, I think that that's the thing. I think sometimes we find ourselves throughout the course of life trying to chase that rush, trying to chase that pump that we felt or whatever. So I'm going to pivot. I'm going to use that to pivot because
Mhm.
I remember the morning that your first number one it hit the number one on the chart, right? And I remember you and I talked on the phone that morning, and I asked you how you felt, and you said, "Actually, I feel kind of the same."
Yeah,
And the crazy thing is with your business, the industry that you're in, um, one number one begets two, two beget, five, like there's like
yeah,
this internal pressure to kind of
yeah.
to kind of chase that whatever pump or whatever rush or whatever comes along with it. Do you feel like does that in any way motivate you, demotivate you? Like what, are you even chasing that kind of stuff at this point? Are you like, man, that's just not even something that I even think about?
Well, as I'm trying to receive every moment for what it is, like um, every situation has, I feel like that I go into, I kind of like while I'm in it, I go, let's stop, let's not resist to what's happening here, you know? So we'll a little less resistance in my life or whatever. So like if someone with that I'm writing with, which for the most part, the only way I'm gonna write a commercial song is probably with somebody else, you know what I mean? And so we join together to do that or whatever in some sort of like communal situation and I like and and it's like if oh man if this idea like if he has an idea or I have an idea that seems like something that could um be something that could be fruitful and it could be kind of work on radio or whatever, then I'll roll with that and that can be fun. It's like a whole nother part of the way I do things or whatever. um so and there are times where I feel, yeah, certainly I feel I try not to, but I certainly feel because I don't think it benefits me to feel pressure. I think it can like definitely can stop up the flow, but there are certainly times where I feel pressure to might have a hit song, whether it's been a little bit of time or whatever, since the last one, you can feel like, and so I try to, like I said, I just want to be as much as I possibly can, just this, this water hose for these things to come through. You know what I mean? Like I just want to be this opportunity for God to do what he wants to do through me, in spite of me and with me or whatever. And it really doesn't do any good for me to put a lot of pressure on myself because then that's kind of putting pressure on me. And now my ego's involved and I'm writing songs that I don't really care that my, whatever. And they can be, you can get rich off those for sure, but I'm not sure it helps the situation, but I certainly can feel pressure. And so I try not to do what I was going to say earlier is I try not to watch certain things that don't make me feel very, they make me feel that there's a little bit of it doesn't like my competitive nature is a lot is down to its final last breaths, I feel like. But it still has a gasp or two left in it. And if I watch like an award show or if I watch Instagram too long, which is just, people just talking about all the stuff that they do and what they've done or whatever, then I can start to feel like, oh man, I got to get back in. I got to get back in the, I got to, oh, maybe I need to do this. I need to do that, as opposed to trying to do what your gut's telling you to do, what kind of comes more um natural to you in a way. I think people can hear that when there's a bit of more sincerity to what you're doing.
No, totally. And that's the thing. Because I do wonder sometimes, like, because again, it's your livelihood, right? So I mean that I can see where, it being your livelihood, the business part of it can sometimes get in the way of the creative, just kind of like you said, the flow or whatever. But it's just like, hey man, I've got bills to pay. I've got, all these things, just like everybody else. You want to, go on vacation or eat Chick-fil-A one
Yeah,
day.
yeah, yeah. I
So
mean,
yeah,
I haven't had to, I really haven't been stressed to that degree in that stuff or whatever, but like, um, I just want to do something that's, like, I don't want to look at my life and go, what happened there? What did I do all this time? Like, why was I doing that? So uh, it's like, you can start to operate in the idea that there's a formula to how you make money at doing some things, but that can also be its own limiting belief. That can be its own limiter because yes, you know how much, but what if you did it this other way and there's a whole much more, uh, you know, uh, it can be more profitable in ways you can't even imagine. I'm not even just talking about financial, which is probably the least of the profit the least, it's a necessary evil, but it's probably the least of the profit that I'm as concerned about, to my wife's chagrin, honestly, and my banker's
Yeah.
chagrin.
Yeah. No, well, so man, there's a lot of ground we could cover, but I mean, you know that we could talk for a long time,
Yeah.
so real quick, just to kind of, I want to get us up to speed a little bit because, so this poster right here, that's actually
Yeah.
a Cadillac Sky poster.
It's cool. I
Um,
can't really see what date is it.
let me see. It is, and you may have been gone, but it was November 1st, 2010.
Hmm.
And so just gone on tour with the Mumford guys. And
Yeah.
so all that to say, you were again one of the founding members, but you made a lot of great, long-lasting, relationships there. I mean, even beyond, your bandmates. I mean, just even got to meet some of your heroes like Ricky and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
which has been great. But so all that to say, like, let me real quick. So a bluegrass band in Texas is kind of it's a weird fit. If I'm being
Yeah.
honest, like, I mean, I've worked as an agent. It's really hard to put bluegrass bands in Texas.
Yeah.
Texas swing is its own thing.
Yeah.
But bluegrass in Texas, originating from Texas, like it's kind of a it's kind of a misnomer, right? Kind of a weird thing. So like all that to say, like when you and we can talk about your touring just briefly with that, but how difficult was it for you to kind of create something that was just so almost I don't want to say stand alone, but you really were kind of blazing a trail as far as Texas bluegrass players and
Yeah.
kind of putting that on the map. I mean, would you say that's accurate, or do you maybe feel like that's overstating it?
Feel free to overstate. The older I get, I enjoy more overstating of the past. I honestly, at the time, I didn't really think about it. I was just trying to get it. I was just trying to get a couple of gigs, and try to do something that I thought that I would enjoy, that I was excited about. I'd always loved bands. I used to have this book called that written by the great Pete Wernick of Hot Rods fame, and it was called How to Make a Band Work. And it was like put together it was like Kinko style, like probably early '80s when it came out. And I would just go through the pages and read how to make a band work and over. So I'd really like when I got that sort of push to sing my own songs from Ancient Wade. I was like that is really something I've always wanted to do. So for me to put a band together and rehearse and kind of start getting gigs, and I remember I would just call people like call venue or call festivals and say, hey, like talk them into having us at their festival or whatever. And I remember getting the first one, which was I remember it was like Grapeland, Texas. And it was like we played. She stuffed us on a Sunday. I remember it was like on a Sunday morning show, and we played for like 30 minutes. There probably was 27 people there, but it was like to me, it was just like, oh, this is it was a very sweet time for me, like exciting time. I was like making every EPK. I was making every poster, every whatever. I was just like, I'd be over at my mother's house she had a nicer printer than we did, and I'd be printing this stuff off, and I was making up all the verbiage and stuff like this. And I kind of been doing that since I was a kid. I would like come up with like neighborhood basketball leagues, and I would put people in different leagues, and I'd say you're playing this team, and I'd write like I was writing a flyer to someone all the time, and like so them to read. So I was kind of all that stuff was like really something I've always loved and been excited about. So the band taking off and doing all the things that it started to do, it took a long time though. It took a really long time. It's funny, like I left the band and right as we got on the Mumford and Son tour, and like I had decided to leave earlier in the year and try to help facilitate finding a new lead singer and all this kind of stuff. But I did get to do some of those dates with Mumford guys, and it was an amazing way to go out. But people don't, and so a lot of people's like first, maybe their heads started to spin around that time period about this band called Cadillac Sky. And I'm like, we were already 10, almost at that point, like we're 9 years in. I was 9 years into slaving over a band that really, was doing but just never had any breakthrough, not real breakthrough success. So it's a long, long time to have a band, not nearly 10 years. There just aren't many bands that last that long. So, um, and so but and of course I left, and about 3 minutes later it was over. The band had sort of went on hiatus, which who knows? Maybe someday I'm still friends with everybody. So you never know. Someday we might get our canes out and go out and play again. Um, but that was I didn't really think about it at the time that it was. I just knew it was hard and difficult, and I knew that we were making music that was interesting because we really didn't know what we were doing. we didn't have like we didn't, if you grow up in like Appalachia or like in, like that kind of North Carolina, that sort of Kentucky, all that kind of stuff or whatever. If you grow up in that Virginia area, like stuff, you have it in your blood.
Yeah.
You know the rhythms of stuff in the play. People would be like excited or put off by what we did, but it was because we weren't, it wasn't birthed in us. It wasn't bubbling up in our blood.
Well, and that's what I was going to say, and because I booked dates for you guys, and so like what I would say is I can tell you, and again, this had nothing to do with, who you were character wise, personality wise, whatever. People didn't like you.
Right, right, right,
Like
right, right.
like
And
I can tell you, promoters did not like you,
yeah, yeah. But there
and
were some that did.
right,
Uh,
but yeah, oh, obviously, but I would say that part of the reason was because you're not doing it the way that we need you to do it.
yeah,
That
definitely.
I mean, I think that's you guys are pedal to the metal. It's too much.
Yeah, for sure.
And
It would be probably too, honestly, to look back now, like sometimes I watch it and I go, oh, it wasn't, there are times it was a bit too much, but the thing that I liked about it was a sort of like naive approach to it. And like, it was at least interesting. I kind of like decided, like, I think somebody might have said this already, Brian Eno maybe has said, or I don't know, somebody said that they all they like are either awesome bands or bad bands, and what these middle of the ground, sort of mediocre, pretty good, you know what I mean? Like shoulder shrug. Yeah, they're good. I hate that response. So I always liked that either there was like, we'd go play for a crowd full of, whatever. We'd go play for a crowd for 50 people. There'd be 15 people that would be diehards by the end of the set and 35 that didn't like us. I think that math's good. That didn't like us. And I thought that was good. Like I would prefer that than have 50 people go like, "Ah, that's pretty good. That you're pretty cool." You know what I mean? Like I didn't like that. I didn't never wanted that response. In fact, my favorite shows, at least for a long period of time, were shows where barely anybody showed up, because that happened. And I would be like, I would be so inspired to give these people the best show. Absolutely. My focus would be so much stronger than it would be for like if we were playing Telluride or whatever. Like, because I just wanted to not only wanted to thank the people that showed up, but also like prove to those people we were worth showing up for. And don't feel bad that there wasn't any there. You're one of the few people that showed up. That's cool. That's
no,
that sort of outsider
totally agree.
mentality.
No, totally agree. And man, so here's the thing, because I want to cover a couple things and then I'll let you go. And if you hear my dogs barking, that's the human element, man. You're going to hear the human element of the podcast. You're a
I
dog
can't.
guy, you can appreciate it. So,
I
um,
can't.
so man, so real quick, so you've stepped out, you've done a lot of things since then, and we could cover all that, but you're smack dab still in the middle. I would say even a year later, you're still in the middle of performing and promoting and all this stuff. An independent project that is
Yep.
probably your most vulnerable in the respect that certainly you're using your name, which you've never done.
Yep. Yep.
But also I think just kind of stepping out of some of the, I mean, again, it's kind of like it's a new challenge for you. It's something that's different for you, I think, in a lot of ways. Like, so if you could kind of sum up, let me ask you this. Sum up kind of what that process, because I know you said you worked with Eddie Spear on that, who, he's got some skins on the wall and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
so kind of explain that process of kind of like where you like how you got through and then like where you are now with it and how difficult it is maybe to promote yourself in a lot of ways an independent record. Sometimes you're kind of your own PR.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Well, it is definitely difficult. I don't know how the music business works. I've been inside the belly of the beast to some degree. I've been at least close to the belly button, possibly. I've been close, and I still don't know what's happening. It's because it's constantly changing, so it's a moving target. So I don't really know how to promote something. I don't know how to publicize something. I don't know how to book anything anymore. Like I don't know how to all that stuff. But I never knew how to do it though. That's the problem. That's the part of me that's like, well, I didn't know how to do it before. So this is maybe it'll work out. I have some strange faith that I go. I just think if I try to do good, something I think is halfway decent or the best that I can do, then it's going to work out. So I made this record under my own name, and 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 it's funny, like I made the record around, I started the record around like right before COVID, the lost years of quiet years of COVID. And then through um, basically, basically the record got done around 22. I think it took a while, obviously, to put out and all that kind of stuff and get out into the world. But uh, it was kind of patched together, like it was recorded initially. Some of the songs were recorded with my buddy Matt Menifee. We were in a band called the Golden Age, and we recorded a couple of songs from the record in a recording for that record. And then sort of Matt, like, I mean, COVID did a number not only on the physical part of people, obviously, sadly so, but it also just did it just mentally could mess you up, and it messed me up a little bit to some degree. Sometimes I see I'm still coming out of some of the ways that some of the things that happened throughout that time period, but it really took Matt for it kind of knocked him for a loop for a little while, and didn't know what he wanted to do and what he wanted to be, but he knew he didn't need to be in a band or whatever. So that was part of the shift that took so long, is like I was like, okay, I only want, if I'm going to record a record under my own name, then some of the material has to shift than what I've already recorded. I need to, because when you make music for a band or even a duo or whatever, you're kind of thinking with the other people in mind, or at least I do. So when I write songs for myself, it's like more I'm the singer, I'm the only person that has to answer for this. And also, I'm going to play a lot of shows, probably where I'm just playing with me and my guitar, or me and a couple of people or whatever. I wanted to keep it where it could be very flexible as far as the instrumentation. So a lot of things are kind of like me and the guitar. They work on that level or whatever. And they were also, and because of it being COVID, we were kind of stuck in a house together, me and my wife and the dogs, and kind of like, don't wake the dogs up, please. You know what I mean? Like I'm working on songs at night or whatever after I've come home, or in the early morning or whatever. And so the songs are quieter. It's the quietest I've ever sang on record, to some people's relief. And so and Eddie Spear was part of that. He wanted me to expound upon like the quieter nature that I surprisingly I do have. And to kind of put that into song and stuff like that. So there's not really, I mean, the loudest song on the record is a song about, sort of self introspection called He Hurt You, Who Hurt You? Or that's pretty much the loudest song on there. So like, and it's not really loud at all. Just it's some instrumentation. So, but and yeah, it took a long time to get over the idea of like putting a thing under my own name. It
Yeah.
sounds, I've never been a huge proponent of my own name. Yeah, I didn't know that I could have changed it early. If I was Catholic, I probably could have changed it around 6 years old. I would have changed it, gone to something else. I'm not sure what I would have went with, but I certainly would have changed it. So that's kind of been something I've getting used to. But now I'm okay with it. Like I've already made another record, which will be out this year. And it's a louder record and it's a funner record because I'm in a louder, funner place, I think, as well than
Yeah.
I was during that period of time. But it's been super cool. I mean, I kind of mangled the release. I put songs out as singles, and then I put the record out, and now the vinyl of it's coming out in January, mid-January, so almost literally 9 months after the release or whatever of the digital record. So, and I'm going to put out a new record, but I don't know. God help me. I'm just trying to make the most of sort of, keep. I like doing what I like to do, and I like making music. I like putting it out in the world and seeing what happens, and then, yeah, if that
Well,
makes sense.
no, it makes sense. And so like I'm going to use that as a segue, and then we'll hit this, and then I'll let you get on about your day. But so you mentioned like, before when you were making music, basically in collaboration, whether it was a band or whatever it was, um, that you had to think about other people.
Yeah.
And so man, I remember, and I've told you this story before, but probably about 7 years ago, we were down in Austin. We were at South by Southwest.
Mhm.
We went to this restaurant. I don't remember what it was, but we went to this restaurant. You got this seafood stew,
Yeah, yeah.
and it's got mussels
I
and
think it's called Frutte de Mare.
is that what it's called?
Frutte de Mare. I think it was. I don't know, but that's an Italian version of seafood soup or whatever. But maybe this wasn't. I don't think it was
No, it was,
Italian.
yeah, it wasn't. It was more like, I don't know, more like Indian or Middle Eastern. I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
But all that to say, man, I remember, it had mussels and it had clams and shrimp and all this kind of stuff. And you drank the broth, you took the broth, and then immediately, because there were probably about 10 of us at the table, you were just like, hey, you got to try this. Hey, you've got to try this. Hey, you've got to try this. And like
Yeah.
there was like this real like, man, you've got to experience this with me because it's so good. I have to tell you about it. So it's almost like this evangelical side of you that
Oh
that
yeah.
that just does things typically in community. So while the oldest is definitely you've done it, you put yourself out there, but like I know that you're right now, we had coffee or we had breakfast a couple weeks ago, and you were telling me about Uncle B's Drunk with Power string band, which is very much done in community. Uh,
Yes.
tell me about that and why you're excited about it.
Well, the official name is actually one word longer, the Uncle B's Drunk with Power String Band Show, which is basically like the sort of like the atrophying. I have an atrophying acoustic arm that was starting to feel like feeling left out and starting gray. The skin was starting to gray on it, and like like it's turning to just bone and ash and dust and stuff. So I was like, man, I really and there's something about like every once in a while, like it sort of aggravates me, like this. Yeah, I'll start itching to do something with just acoustic instruments. There's something even so vulnerable and punk about it that I really like. I actually have a new song on the record that's not an acoustic record that is coming out this year called Punk Rock Show, which but it has electric instruments and all this kind of stuff. But I actually think when acoustic music is played as with the right vibe I hear, I feel like that's as punk as you can get. There's really nothing separating you and the audience. It's just like these acoustic instruments. And so I think that's really cool. So I always kind of get struck by it. So I was like, man, I want to do this, but I also want to create some sort of like, like if you want to book me in a sort of band version with where I come up and I play only acoustic music, then I need a name for that, an entity for that. And um, so I kind of came up with the Uncle B's Drunk with Power string band, and then my guy John O'Neill over at Chiefs on Broadway, Eric Church's bar here in Nashville, has a thing in there called the Neon Steeple, which is the ticketed part of the show. It looks like a church in there. It's an awesome place, and I played an Americana Fest show for him earlier in the year, and he was like, "Man, I want to give you a night to do whatever you want." And I was like, "Oh, maybe I could do." Just a show where I invite my friends and we do something crazy in there, a little irreverent. The Damned Ole Opry is what I've been calling it as well. And it's like Uncle B's Drunk with Power String Band show where basically, I'm inviting friends to come and play like a kind of a house band. And then I'm getting them to play and then we bring in all my friends. And I've got some cool folks that have been saying yes to it. I think they don't, it's pretty amoebic. It's pretty maybe it's the fact that I can't tell them exactly what's going to happen or what is actually because I don't really know, other than we're going to play some music and some things are going to happen and we're going to try and play each month. We're going to try and play a sort of play songs from a record that I like, but it's really just my sort of like fantasy camp, sort of it's right now. It's right now that the Uncle B's Drunk with Power String Band show is settled in one place right now, once a month over there at Chiefs on Broadway. But it's something I want to take on the road if possible and do different things like that. But it's got my head spinning. It's right back in that same place of where like I said, Mohawk Avenue Neighborhood Basketball League. I'm coming up with names for my buddies, the three of the four of them friends, you're going to play these three or four friends. I come up with the names for them and I put you together and y'all play together. It's that kind of sort of probably slightly maniacal Wizard of Oz kind of like part of my creative process that I really like. And so like getting my friends to get to play and hear their songs and different concepts they never heard before and me to get to play with all my friends. It's just like, who wouldn't do that? You know what I mean? It's kind of like being at your funeral, but you're actually there. You know what I mean? You're actually there and you're at the dance. I mean, you don't dance at a funeral, but you picture it, yeah, it's kind of like a funeral, but I actually get to be there and we're having a good time.
Yeah, no, man. And listen, part of the
Is
reason,
that good for the marketing of it? I think it's pretty good. It's like a
yeah,
funeral.
yeah, people there, yeah, it's like fly, motto flame. People are, but here's what I would say to that though, man, and we'll cut it loose, man. But there's I've got a guilty pleasure movie. I don't know what is your guilty pleasure movie? Do you have a guilty pleasure movie?
That's a good question. Hmm. What movie did I come back and watch like when I really want to veg out or whatever on it?
It's something maybe that you wouldn't
Pulp
have known.
Fiction.
Okay, okay, yeah,
Pulp
yeah,
Fiction, I guess. Braveheart. I mean, those are some of my favorite movies, so I guess those are the movies I would watch again. But I know there's supposed to be movies that are bad that I don't mind watching.
Sure.
Um, Rocky movies are good though. I'm trying to think like, what's yours?
Well, what I was so yeah, part of the for
John
me,
Cusack obviously stars.
yeah, he's no, I wish, but I would say, man, the movie that I find it really difficult to turn off for some reason, and it's not even that it's that good, is uh Armageddon. And I don't know why,
Mhm.
but like if it's on, I'll typically just like have it playing in the background or something like that. And there's this point, there's this at the end where the clock is ticking down and everybody's about to die and the world, the universe is about to implode and all this kind of stuff. And they need Harry, who's Bruce Willis, they need him to punch the button. And
Yeah.
and then Ben Affleck, he's like, Harry's gonna do it. He's like, I know it. He's like, he doesn't know how to fail. And
Yes.
and so like, of course, he hits the button and saves the universe and all this kind of
Yes.
in a similar vein, man. For anybody that doesn't know what Uncle B's Drunk with Power string band is, I would encourage them to go because in my experience, not that Brian Simpson doesn't know how to fail, but Brian Simpson doesn't tend to make crap.
Thanks,
That,
man.
that 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 would that would be my endorsement is that when you put your hand to the plow for something that you really love, it is spastic and creative and imaginative, and it is all the descriptive words, and people I think leave a lot of the time just like, what did I just see? What did I just witness?
Yeah, I
And
appreciate that.
and even though you feel like maybe it's the one thing that you do well and you didn't get Harold's, other, traits or whatever, man, the one that God gave you is pretty dynamic. And so man, I love that just friend to friend. I love that I can count on you to challenge my ideas of what is original and what is different and outside the box. So I just wanted to tell you, man, that as a friend, man, I appreciate that element of who you are.
I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. I was trying to think about what's the English guy that's like kind of bald? Jason somebody. What's his name? Jason. He's an action hero.
Oh, Jason Statham.
Yes. So, all right. So basically, any Jason Statham movie, like I don't think I've ever watched one at the theater, but I've watched them like TNT after a basketball game or something like that, and I can hardly ever turn them off. He's so like, I've heard him speak in real life, and he's like has a real high pitched voice, but on TV, on movies, he's like so, you know what I mean? And it's like, he's definitely my guilty. But I probably have some strange crush. I don't really know how to.
Man,
Uh,
I'm of the mind, and I doubt that Jason Statham is ever going to hear this, but I'm of the mind that he makes
under,
he makes the same movie every time.
yeah, but it's good. Why make I feel that way about people, like I feel that way about a lot of things. I actually wish I could just hit the same note on a regular basis because it's a good note. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a
No,
good note.
if it ain't broke, like.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Exactly.
yeah, he's a blockbuster success for sure. Well, dude,
Get him on. Dude, you can have him. Would you have a bucket list for the podcast as we close it? I know we're closing
oh
it up.
man, that's a great question. Is it anybody or anybody within reason?
No, I don't need reason.
Uh,
Without reason. I guess they got to be alive.
oh man, that's a great one. That's a great question. I would say um
Kuzak.
he's such a I stopped watching his stuff, man. He kind of started kind of getting a little bit more
Vinci.
just for former Texas former Texas great Vince Young. Yeah, maybe.
Brad Davis.
Former Maverick great Brad Davis. No, man, it's interesting. I would probably say if I could have anybody on, somebody that would be I would love to have maybe Dwight Yoakam on. Um,
Mm, he's good.
yeah, I think Dwight Yoakam would be a fun guest just because he's been so diverse, and I mean he really just kicks so much butt in everything that he does. I mean, we talk about kind of actors that switch over to music. His obviously was the other way around, but most everything that I've seen him in, he just delivers and just
Oh, he not to interrupt you, but he's on Mark Maron had him on the podcast, the
okay.
WTF podcast, and this recently, and it was literally one of the best podcast appearances I've ever heard in my whole life.
What was
He,
what stood
I know
out?
he's supposed to be surly, but he was so incredible.
What stood out about it?
Just in really, really intelligent about where he comes from, the history of his life, the people in it. I'm always like fascinated because I can't ever quite remember certain details about like, I haven't spent time. I don't know about like little. I don't notice little details as much as I probably should or whatever about, especially about growing up and things like that. So I really am fascinated by that. But he was gregarious. He's funny, smart. All the things that you want from a good like, like if you're sitting around with your friends at a dinner party, having hanging out. That's what it sounded like.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
Okay,
mean,
who else? Who else? Who else?
oh man, outside of
Oh,
Dwight,
this is Counting Crows lead singer.
Adam Duritz, I don't know, man. Maybe. I just, I'm kind of, I don't know, man. I'm kind of intrigued by, um, I guess people that, okay, and this is a whole other topic. Um, and I think sometimes, and I maybe talked the other day, I had a podcast the other day. We just kind of discussed this, like, so with art, um, art can be funny. So like all your projects, everything you've done have been, they look different. They're not, they're just
Yeah,
kind of like the snowflake unto themselves, right? Because
yeah.
they're just, they're just different. But I think sometimes as a consumer, I'm guilty of wanting something to look exactly the way that it looked before. So like
Mm,
with the first Counting Crows record, and I talked about this previously, I wanted the second to look like the first, and it didn't. And so there was a part of me that just like kind of as a music fan got frustrated that it didn't look like, but again, if it's somebody that if there's an artist that you like, I mean, are you going to hold them to that? And I'm talking about somebody that paints with a brush and color and all this kind of stuff. Are you going to hold them to the same standard of like,
yeah,
man, this picture doesn't look like the one you did before. I'd rather you just kind of keep the like, I don't want it. I don't want number two, because it just
yeah,
doesn't jive with me. But you have to, I think, as a listening audience, you have to give artists the freedom to stretch and paint something different or perform something different, even if it doesn't align with your consumer viewpoint. Or does that make
yeah.
any sense? And I think
Oh, it makes so much sense. The crazy thing about it is like so many of today's artists in certain genres or whatever kind of like make the genres that I'm involved in several different ones. Like it seems like a lot of people make the same music over and over. And I always think it's a missed opportunity because I think fans are more in tune with personalities now than ever before because a lot of these artists have grown their fan base from a personality based sort of like site, like whether it's TikTok or Instagram or whatever, or X or whatever it is, like they've grown. So people are into the personality of the person and the celebrity of the person as much as they are, much or more as they are into their music. And like there's a latching onto that. So like, so to me, it's funny, like when artists kind of continue to make the same record over and over, especially young ones, new ones, because I think the fan base would be more likely to just roll with you on anything because they're just into your personality and your celebrity of who you are. I went to a show recently, a buddy of mine who's like really popping off now in the country world, and like it was packed. And as I watched the show, like so few people were actually they were taking pictures of themselves at the show or talking to their friends about being at the show, but they weren't listening to the music. And as if like it was a second thought. So I always think it's like but they're there because they like that artist as far as like they like something about his artistry, but not necessarily do they care that much about the music. It might be the way he expresses himself on, maybe way he looks and maybe the way he, all those kind of things, what he's a part of, that kind of movement and all that kind of stuff or whatever. So I think there's a chance, but when we were growing up, it was all the music. That's sometimes the only way we had so it makes sense that we'd be like, what happened here? It's like we got it's like they changed their personality on us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like first, I liked your personality because I only knew the music was the only way you expressed it. And now you've taken it away. And it's like, what'd you do with my friend?
Yeah. No,
It makes
exactly.
sense that you feel that way, I think.
No, exactly. Well, and listen, we talked about, or I've talked about it a couple times here, that there are guys, there are people that cross over, right? That do both. So like for instance, you've got Billy Bob Thornton, he's got his own music thing. You've got Kiefer Sutherland, he's got his own music thing. Kate Hudson, I think, has started to do her own music thing, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, and people show up because it's like, man, she was amazing and
Yeah.
almost famous, and I want that Kate Hudson. And then when you show up, it's like, well, that kind of sucked. Like I didn't. Why wasn't she the girl from Almost Famous? That's what I was kind of hoping for. And you
That's
know
getting
what?
back to that novice thing, man, of like trying to accept what's in front of you and not what you hoped is. I think there's a quote that someone says the beautiful way or the great way is open to anybody who doesn't have a lot of prejudices or what's the, I think it's like if you're not coming into every situation with hopes that it'll be something, whatever that term would be, like whatever like if you come into every situation hoping it'll be something that you already anticipated before, then you won't allow it to be what it is,
Yeah,
and
you'll be
you'll
let
miss it.
down. Yeah, you'll be
Miss
you'll be let down and disappointed for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, but you'll miss it. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, man, dude, thank you, man. This has been a great conversation, and
we didn't miss it, did we? We did it.
I think I hit record. I think we're good. But I'll check here in a minute. But dude, I know it goes without saying. I don't say this to all my guests, but I love you, dude. And
Too, man.
your family to me, man, and to future successes, and thank you so much, man, for jumping on, hitting the road.
Dude, have me back on sometime. Like second appearance, like once we got it, stacking it, starting to stack the appearances. People go, oh, yeah, I remember his first appearance, that kind of thing.
We'll do it, man.
See you, bud.
All right, bud.
Bye.
Later, man.